Most of you, all of you know, my name's Natalie. This is Kenney. So we're gonna talk about influencers and ambassadors today. Really excited about this topic because I think it's kind of a newer marketing realm, but one that's super important and is seeing a lot of success. But before we start, we'll do introductions. If you were not in this room, what would you be doing outside?
No, what are you going to do outside? Not what would you be doing. What are you going to do outside?
I love it. Do you want to start?
Sure. Megan Boston here with Hawthorne Bank, and what I really want to do is go kayaking, but I'm probably just going to take maybe down to the island.
Love it. It's a solid choice in our capital city.
Mm-hmm.
Susan Neal Gotti with the chamber, and I know that later on this afternoon, I'm gonna be sitting on the patio with some chamber friends because we have a meeting at Big Whiskey for our golf committee. And I have a feeling that meeting will be moved onto the patio, not inside today at 4 o'clock.
As well it should.
I was gonna say, if it isn't, that's disappointing.
I know, I think that it will move outside.
There are so few days like today where in Missouri, you cannot be hot or cold.
Yeah.
Like you just
And there's
can't
no
be.
bugs yet. It's so perfect.
Yeah,
Okay,
Tomorrow there will be bugs.
Jamie.
Good morning. I guess it's good afternoon. Jamie Meyer with RMI Business Finance. I've been in the house all day today, so I probably get out and do some yard work later on this afternoon.
Bryn.
Yes, hello. Bryn Forston with The Backdrop. I am wishing I was outside right now for sure, but I plan on enjoying the bit of weather when I walk to get lunch, wherever that might be today.
Janet.
Hi there, this is Janet Waring-Lowe with SSM Health. I don't have any plans outside today. Shame on me. Would be a perfect day for a walk or a bike ride.
Fit it in.
Or
Fit it in.
just go to Barvino and sit outside. That counts too.
That's an outdoor activity. Yeah.
Michaela, I don't know if you can talk or not yet. It looks like you might be connecting.
All right. Well, so I'm Kenney Newville, and I'm with Newville Consulting and also Modern Litho, Getty Printing. And I will be on a bike today, probably spinning in circles with my 8-year-old daughter, not going as far as I'd like to, but I am getting on a bike. Period.
That's good.
Yeah.
I'm gonna enjoy the quiet house when you guys are not in the house, so we'll see. Maybe I'll take a walk. Okay, perfect. So we will jump on here and we're gonna talk about influencers, ambassadors, hopefully help you guys kind of come up with a new marketing strategy on how to use those two groups of people.
Yeah, I think when people talk about what platforms they need to invest in, you know, where do I need to go next? You know, it's often overlooked, you know, that there are a few more steps that you can take. Even if you have a great following, even if you have a great posting strategy, there are a few more steps you can take before you've really clinched it and you can move on to the next big thing. And this is one of those things where it's going to help you no matter what platform you're on or what avenue, quite frankly, you're using. Even if it's not digital, if you've got radio, if you've got television, whatever it is. So I was thinking over there because I thought it was easier.
I know, it was weird. I always present on this side.
It's kind of like when you're married and you have a certain side of the bed, apparently.
Yeah, I was like, I can't do it over there. It's weird. Checking, because we did look, but the people on Zoom, you guys can see the presentation.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
Okay, so as we talk about this, okay, what's the difference between an ambassador and an influencer? A lot of times those words are used interchangeably, but they are different things. So an ambassador is somebody who, they love your brand, they love your product. It probably has come about naturally. They don't always have to be paid. They just really love your brand. A lot of times they'll be happy with perks or free product. They don't always recognize their ability to influence others. So they don't think that if they're sharing about things on social media that makes a difference. And so really thinking of them as your vocal cheerleader, they want your brand to succeed. So I feel like the best example of this is my obsession with Campfire Mocha, with High Rise Bakery. They didn't pay me to do all of the publicity for that drink that I did, but I love it, and I think other people would love it, so I always shared it. So in that case, I was an ambassador.
And an ambassador isn't necessarily always somebody who's formally asked to do that for you. But obviously, if you've got somebody that's crazy, like Natalie is to High Rise, then what you do is, if you're High Rise, you make the formal ask, and we'll talk about that a little bit as we go.
So an influencer is somebody who has an audience that listens to their recommendations on a variety of topics. So it is somebody that has built this group of people they're looking to them for their recommendations. It's their job, so they have to be paid because this is their career typically. But they may not be long-term promoters. So if we go to the High Rise example, I will always love High Rise. I will always talk about how great they are. Somebody who's a paid influencer might only be promoting them for a certain campaign or a certain topic or a certain product. And they'll have to use the ad or sponsored hashtags on their posts.
And even when they don't have to, because of the platform of the choice, or that they're big on, it's still a good idea if you do hire an influencer to ensure that they add that, because otherwise it could look creepy in this day of authenticity. That's what people like, is authenticity. So definitely don't shy away if you're paying someone to be an influencer for you to have them add them.
And paid doesn't always mean better. So.
Because of authenticity.
Okay, so let's talk about ambassadors first, because I do think with the people in this room and on Zoom and our budgets, or my perceived marketing budget that I think you probably have, ambassadors is probably the way that most people in this room are going to go. Maybe not, but so we'll jump into there first.
And certainly if you have a local reach, if you have a local audience, this is definitely going to be the better bang for your buck. We live in a very small community where there's a lot of interconnected circles of influence. And if you can grab a couple different people in the periphery of your circle of influence, you've now gotten a bigger slice of the pie. Whereas if you're paying Kanye West to advertise whatever you do here in Jefferson City, people aren't probably going to travel from Quebec to Jefferson City, probably, for your product or service. So
how do you create ambassadors? The first thing you want to do is encourage your current customers or your staff to share. So that is your best group of people. They're the ones that know your brand or your business, your organization the best. So always starting with those current customers or any staff that you may have. People can hear it, it's not there, it's up here. Making it official. So when people do post about your business online, often ask them to be an ambassador. So make sure you're checking your mentions, your tags, that kind of thing. And when you see somebody who's really excited about it, often ask them to be an ambassador for you. Definitely providing your product to a handful of people, asking them to share. And this could be something, we had some ambassadors with the library when BookBox launched. So that's not really a product as in something they're going to keep, but it was a new program we rolled out. We let them try it out first, and then we asked them to post about their experience. And we had a lot of great traction with that.
obviously, whenever you provide somebody with a product or a service, and then you expect them to share their experience, you have to be understanding that if they have a bad experience, that's probably what is going to come through. So you have to really be secure in what your product or your service is. And you also have to allow them the flexibility to give, again, an authentic insight into what their experience was. So maybe before you did something like this to the public, perhaps you brought that person in and you provided them with that product or service, and then you asked for their impressions on a one-to-one basis. So you have an understanding of how they feel prior to them shouting it to their sphere of influence.
And then always working on building relationships. That just goes to customer service in general, but whether it's somebody who you're chatting with online or whether it's a customer that comes into your brick and mortar store, always making sure that you are building that relationship and getting to know them. It just makes it easier.
I mean, when you think about local business especially, who do you think of when you think of a service or a product in this town? Because here's the thing is, when I picked up my bike the other day from getting service at Red Wheel, I told Natalie, I'm picking my bike up from Nick. I didn't say I was going to Red Wheel. I said I'm picking it up from Nick. Or when I go to Barbino, I immediately think of Matt, or I think of Zach, right? Or when Natalie goes to
Coffee
High
Zone.
Rise or Coffee Zone,
To see Sarah. Yeah.
it's Tasir, it's Sarah. So it's, you think about the people who really are that product or service that you enjoy so much. Flip that. And now those people, or you are that person that they think of when they need your product or service, right? So always work on building good relationships.
So once you kind of have that ambassador relationship established, ways that you can really foster it. Again, not being afraid to ask, sometimes having that formalized like conversation with them, it makes people think like this is a responsibility. This is something that I want to do. You know, there's a lot of times, even Kenney and I and Catherine went to go have lunch at the landing zone. And I was like, oh, Kenney, I'm gonna make a fun reel about this. Part of that is we do marketing all the time, and so we think about that stuff. But if we had a relationship with people who owned that business, they'd be like, hey, can I use that? Like, can I do that? So.
And sometimes I think people get scared when we use the word formal or responsibility in regards to this. But when we say that, we mean, you know, if you notice that there's somebody who's constantly posting about your product or service or brand online, don't be afraid to reach out and say, hey, we really appreciate you doing this. We'd like for you to do this more. Is there something we can offer you to help you get a wider experience with our products or services? You know, it doesn't have to be a contract. It doesn't have to be a formal ask, like, you know, please let us know by this day at this time if you accept. No, I mean, what we mean is don't be afraid to call them an ambassador, call them an evangelist, call them whatever you want. But the idea is that they're going out there and they're providing you with really, quite honestly, authentic and free or low cost branding and marketing.
I mean, I think about like Carrie does, the mayor Carrie does so much stuff with East and West Coast, and she's always wearing their stuff and tagging them. So there's things like that make it where it's more well known. Like I know when she's wearing athletic wear, I'm like, oh, I bet that's East and West Coast.
And this isn't something that's exclusively for small town environments either. So again, I'm kind of a fat guy on a bike. I like riding bikes. I'm not a cyclist. But I have a friend who is a cyclist. This guy rides every day, multiple miles, 50 to 60 miles a day. And he actually was approached by a brand called Pactimo. And they basically give him riding gear, so jerseys and bib shorts and stuff like that, and gloves and socks and stuff. And he only wears their merchandise, and he posts about it every time he rides. And he has a little handle, you know, his name and then Pactimo Ambassador. Again, this is probably a very successful international cycling brand that's reaching out to people on social media who they've never really even met before and said, hey, you're a good ambassador for cycling, and we think you'll be a good ambassador for our brand as well. And I know several people who've purchased kit from him because they ride with him and they're like, hey, Austin, what are you wearing today? You know, that looks cool, or I like that color sock, you know, so they buy. So it does work. It's not just local, it's beyond that.
Stay in contact with them. I think this is where a lot of businesses miss it. Like they'll have big upcoming announcements or events, things that are happening, and they don't communicate that with their ambassadors or with the people they want to get the word out to. So, you know, maybe having a special correspondence, like you send emails. I know I'm an ambassador or an influencer for, it's called Jovi. It's like a paint patch brand. And they send us special emails about all, like we always get advance notice of their sales. They give us special graphics to use. It just makes it really easy for something where it's like, well, I'm not going to take the time to like create content. Like I don't get paid that much for it, but they give me the content to share. So.
And this is really easy to do when you've got somebody who's coming into your shop every day because you're just naturally conversing with them, right? But this is probably maybe where that more formal, you know, comes into play, where you have an e-blast. It's like not only do you see Joe Smith every Wednesday when he comes in, but you're also emailing Joe Smith once a month and just letting him know some things that are coming up he might be interested in to get them in other days besides just that Wednesday.
Well, and even thinking about things like with realtors, like not knowing, I don't know as like a general person, when is the best time to sell a house or buy a house or that kind of stuff. So like people that you're trying to get referrals from, letting them know, hey, like March is a really good time, like that's when the market really picks up, you know, giving those kind of information to keep it on top of mind. Creating and sharing guidelines, this is especially important if you're in a regulated industry, banking and finance, and that there's all kinds of rules that you guys have that I do not have to deal with, and I do not have answers for a lot of that.
That's where you're getting real formal.
Yeah, but just keeping that in mind, if you're in a very heavily regulated industry, make sure that you're following those guidelines. And sometimes it's as much, you know, there's brands that we've worked for that, I'm like, well, can we say this? And they're like, oh no, like you don't want to say that because X, Y, Z. I'm like, oh, what? No idea.
And here's the thing, a lot of times, especially in our more like flexible culture that we live in, where like, I saw an article on LinkedIn yesterday, it was like, are men's suits dead? And I'm like, well, not in Jefferson City, but almost everywhere else, they seem to be after the pandemic. I mean, I'm presenting to you in a polo, jeans, and chucks. You know, so formality is kind of like, you know, it's in that weird space. But I will say this, guidelines are not only prohibitive, but they are also empowering. And what I mean by that is if you've got an ambassador who loves your brand, loves what you do, and they want to help you, and they go out there and they say something and you are like, that's the wrong thing, they're going to feel really bad if they have to change that, especially if they come to you like your kid who like draws this really crappy picture, you have to love it, right? And they're like, look what I did. And you're like, that's, you know, maybe next time if we change it like this, and you think about all that excitement and you're just kind of killing it. So if there's anything that you know just isn't gonna work well, that's when you talk with them, when you approach them, or when you provide them with a product or service for their opinions, that's when you kind of want to let them know, hey, these are the parameters, you know, anything you do is awesome, we really appreciate it, but maybe stay away from this verbiage, you know, or whatever landmines that you foresee in your own marketing, let them know where they are so they don't step on.
And then, like I said earlier, creating content for them to share. And then making sure that you tag them if they're sharing content they created. So for example, if they make a video and post about it on their Instagram and you want to share it, make sure you tag them. Because then it's kind of mutually beneficial. It's helping them get more reach as well as a content creator.
And when you tag them, especially cross platforms, be sure that you're actually tagging them. I saw a brand today that was a little too close to comfort to me, that tagged somebody on Facebook and it was an @ symbol and it was just plain text, the name, like you clearly didn't link. So A for effort, we know who they are, but we can't click them and find out where they are. You know, we have to kind of search. So always when you tag people, always tag people and always do that.
And then making sure that you always have resources or information that's available and easy for them to find if they do have questions. So like, for example, again, with the library, we have a monthly calendar that has all of our programs. Like I make sure all of our staff have those. So if someone asks something, they always have it easily accessible. Okay, some other things just to consider. Ambassadors are experts in your brand. They're experts at promoting your products casually. They're probably already promoting your brand. So for an ambassador, there's not necessarily a lot of legwork to finding those people. You can just go look at your social tags and mentions and see who they are. Again, they're not celebrities. They don't usually have a huge network of social media followers, but they are the ones that I feel like if you go and look at their like personal posts, they have lots of comments, lots of engagement, that kind of stuff. So they may have a small audience, but it's a very engaged audience. And I think this is super interesting. They're authorities in their field and the field your brand serves. So for example, if you sell mouthwash, a dentist would be a great person to partner with. Like they'd be great brand ambassadors. So just kind of thinking about that kind of thing. You know, I'm thinking even for your handmade stuff, like brides. Those are great brand ambassadors for you. Especially the ones who are in like their 20s when all their friends are getting married at the same time. So just trying to like think about that kind of stuff.
And don't get too caught up on the word authority here, because remember, we live in a very small community. So just because they may not be an authority on brides and things like that, they are an authority on Jefferson City, and they have a network that they are an authority with. So in other words, they can still penetrate certain segments of the population that you might not have yet.
And I mean, I joked with, we had the custom ribbon cutting and he had the mobile coffee bar. And I joked with them, I was like, this is a great market for you guys. These are all of the event planners of the community are standing in this room right now, finding out about your brand new mobile coffee bar. She was like, oh, yeah. Was like, we will all be calling you and being like, hey, like, we would love to have you at this event, do that event. So keeping that in mind.
Well, and likewise, don't forget that a brand ambassador for your business may be another business. I think sometimes we get so hyper focused on competition and every dollar is a possible my dollar situation. But when you've got a collaboration of brands coming together, you know, especially if there's crossover, but even if there isn't, it's a fantastic opportunity. Natalie and I picked up multiple business cards by going to the custom. It's not screen printing anymore.
Custom promotion brands.
Promotional branding. Sorry, I have too many hats with custom screen printing.
Okay, but we got new ones.
That's right.
Yeah. I was like,
I know that.
we got the new ones.
I know
They gave us the new ones with the new branding. Madison's has been a huge library ambassador. They share and post about us all the time. And if you look at it, there's really no connection other than we'll go downtown locations, but they always do. They're great about it. And then like we talked about, employees, board members, volunteers, don't overlook those people. Sometimes it feels like because they work there, we don't want to ask them to do that, but they're the best ones to get the word out.
As a board member on several current and past boards, and Natalie too, we talk about this all the time, but don't be afraid to put your board members to work. There's this idea that like, oh, well, they already do so much. But then you stop and think about it, and you're like, well, they actually, you know, maybe our board members only come to like one meeting a month. Yeah, we need to have them be doing more, you know? So don't be afraid. They should be your #1 cheerleaders in the community.
Okay, many of you may have already watched this video before, but I'm gonna share it again because we're proud of it.
Here I am at my garage sale. I just couldn't wait. I had to go out and buy the book. And now I've got shelves and shelves and nobody's buying them at my garage sale. Hello.
Okay. Did you know you could donate your books tomorrow at the book sale?
So you mean if nobody comes and buys all my books here today, that I have somewhere to take them?
You can donate them to the library.
Really? When?
All year long.
Scenario, distressed patron. The location, the Capitol Mall.
Like here I am at Capitol Mall, but what I really want to do is read books. Where in the world can I get them all the way out here?
Well, my friend, don't despair, because the bookmobile is there for you.
For me?
Did you know the bookmobile comes to the Capitol Mall on Thursdays?
I didn't.
One Thursday a month, 11 to 1. We park right next to Pizza Hut.
And you have books there, right?
Books, yes, and you get yourself a slice of pizza and then come read a book.
That would be fantastic. Thank you, Bookmobile Man.
I sure wish there was a venue for local art. Know that the library has a rotating collection of local artists' works. Did you?
I can never get this thing to work right.
Oh, hey, did you know the library does one-on-one tech time? You should also make a reservation.
Oh, thanks.
Here are 2 men in a doctor's office.
Man, I am spending a fortune on ebooks. My wife is getting so mad.
Hey, did you know you could get free ebooks and audiobooks through the library?
I did not.
Check it out.
Thank you.
Customer service training costs how much? Gee, I sure wish there was an affordable option for training my employees.
Well, you are in luck. The library offers all sorts of online resources, including lynda.com, that has customer service training, it's got management training, it's even got things like Photoshop and Excel. You check it out.
Woo-hoo!
Hello, customer husband. They have been seen for my outdoor.
I really wish I could understand this woman.
Did you know that you can learn languages online for free at the library?
I did not know that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Kindergarten would turn out to be absolutely positively awesome after all. I get so tired of hearing the same voice over and over again. Don't despair. The library has a solution. We have an online storytelling service called Tumble Books. You should check it out.
So I think one reason why I love that video so much is because we used it to train our staff on how they can be their own ambassadors for the library. So a lot of those conversations came from real life conversations that we had had. Like I had sat in Catherine's ballet class and heard a mom complaining about having to read the same storybook to her kid over and over and over and over again. And so we tried to use that as an example of how they can advocate for the library and the community. And I think it's just a really easy way to kind of show ways that people can be ambassadors, not online, even just in real life.
Well, and then that video is also cut up into smaller segments, as you could see, as you could probably figure out, and used on social media as well. And so not only was it used to train the staff and create brand ambassadors internally, but then it was also used as content. Who doesn't need more content for social media? And then in addition to that, it was useful content because it was it was giving inspiration to those people who are already your evangelists, who are out there consuming your content, and it encourages them to mimic the people in the video by sharing. So it's a fantastic and multi-purpose video.
I know, I was like, oh, I haven't shared this in a while. I was like, I need to find those videos and share them like as an Instagram reel now. Okay, influencers. Now we're gonna jump to and then I always kind of think of ambassadors as like the hobbyists and influencers as like the professionals. That's just how I keep it straight in my mind.
The ambassadors are the people who love you, and the influencers are the ones who you pay to love you.
Yeah, true story. Okay, so there are lots of different types of influencers. We got this information from Influencer Marketing Hub. So the first one are Nano Influencers. So they have 1,000 to 10,000 followers. They have really good engagement rates and a very engaged social media because they have a smaller audience, and they're kind of the ones that are like starting to grow. So they're really into connecting with their people. They're very vocal advocates of their brands, the products they love. Their followers really appreciate their authentic recommendations and commentary. A lot of times with these nano influencers, they're the ones that the audience, like the ones who I follow who fall into this, like I always make sure I go and check their pages because I'm very interested in what they have to say, because it's all very authentic. So they have a close relationship with their followers, they engage with them to cultivate those relationships. So most of you guys know Leslie, she often comes to these and helps us with stuff. She would fall into this nano influencer. This is from this morning, so she's got a little over 2,500 followers. She definitely has more of a niche, like special needs mom, police life, that kind of stuff. So those are those nano influencers. If I had to guess, most of the people here, if they were to pay an influencer, this is probably the budget that most people would fit into.
And quite frankly, it's probably the best bang for your buck, because again, these are the people who haven't hit a national stage or maybe even a regional stage, but they've certainly ingratiated themselves with a decent following of local individuals, and perhaps some who reach out as well. And don't forget, we live in the capital city, so there's a lot of people coming and going here. And so even if they're not from Jefferson City, they spend a lot of time here and they're still useful.
Okay. Sure. Anyway. It's good to be here. Okay, so the next group that we have are the micro influencers, so 10,000 to 100,000 followers. They have a pretty large following, but they're still viewed as relatable. They tend to have an engaged audience. Honestly, there's a lot of times, when I start following someone, I don't always look at what their follower count is. There's a lot of times with the nano and the micro that just by the way their content is, I kind of assume they kind of float between those two groups. Usually they do have a particular niche. Typically, I say niche, but a lot of people say niche. So that's often how they're growing their audience because they are very specialized in one thing. High engagement rates, targeted audience. It makes it very easy for brands to create specialized sponsorships with them. So this one that I follow, she has 17,000 followers, Life with Less Mess. All of her stuff is about like decluttering, organizing, minimizing, like her job is as a professional organizer. But she shares lots of tips and stuff on her account. And so she also partners with organizing product companies who want her to use her products when they go in there.
And you'll notice probably one of the things that's missing on each one of these slides, which we still have a few more, but you'll notice that there's no monetary amount because that's going to be very, very specific, not only to your brand and what it's worth to you to have these influencers, but it's also going to be very specific to the influencer. But a good way to approach this conversation would be, hey, I noticed that you've got a great amount of reach within this particular market and you really want to reach into that. You know, have you used our products or services? And would you be interested in working with us as an influencer? And if they say, yeah, I'd be interested, the next question is, if they don't give you something already, is, you ask an open-ended question, what would it take? Because there's also some curiosity on the part of professional influencers to just be like, well, actually your product seems pretty cool. What if you just gave that to me and just let me run with it for a while? And then we can talk after that. Cool. You might get like a month or two of just free influence because you're just letting them play with your product. Whereas other people might come back to you and say, hey, we have structured rates. This is what you're looking at. This many videos, this many posts. If you want me to mention you in a podcast or whatever. So, but ask open-ended questions to get to those individuals. That way you're not locking yourself into maybe too much from you and shutting them out by too little for them.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
As far as like micro and above, do you look at like verified accounts? Or does that kind of not down?
It just kind of depends. Once they're verified, their cost definitely goes up to get them in there, or to get them into a contract.
Yeah, chances are if they're verified, they're probably already doing some influencer work anyways, so that's probably where you're gonna have structured fees. But I don't necessarily know that, like, the blue check mark is gonna do that much more for you if you followed somebody for, let's say, several years and it's who they are. Like, that is who they are. Like, there's not an imposter account or whatever. It still might be valuable for you to reach out to them and enter into some sort of agreement, even though they're not verified.
Yeah.
So it really is a case-by-case basis.
Okay, so macro influencers. So these are like your internet-made celebrities. They might be bloggers, podcasters. I feel like these are the ones when we think of like somebody who is just an influencer, like they don't have another job of any kind. This is kind of what you're thinking of. 100,000 to 1 million followers. It's taken them a long time to get there, so they've probably been doing this for a long time. They probably have a lower engagement rate because of that. So Napkin Kitchen is somebody I follow a lot, 129,000 followers. It's funny to me that she still says personal blog on here. She started a blog when her kids were little, and when they were napping, she cooked, and so that's why it's Napkin Kitchen. But she has grown exponentially in the last, probably, well, with the pandemic, 2 years now. But it's somebody who like has another thing that helps bring an audience to them, whether it's a website, a blog, a podcast, that kind of thing.
And this is the part where I just want to pose something to everybody paying attention now and in the future, since this is probably being recorded. If you're sitting there thinking to yourself, I can't believe we're talking about paying people to be an influencer. And by the way, there are influencer tax write-offs. Influencer is now an official, like, recognized job title. That's the same way that many people view social media managers and still might. This is the world that we live in. Crazy as it is that there are people that literally sit at home all day and try products, that's not what they do. Just like people used to say, well, that person just gets paid to play on Facebook. So these people are the professionals. They might not have a network of people helping them figure out the best way to market your brand or service. They've probably figured it out themselves. So these people are probably experts in sales and marketing and branding. They've made the mistakes and they've learned from them. They're probably going to be able to provide you with engagement statistics and stats. They're going to be selling themselves in the same way that you're selling your brand or service. So it's crazy to consider influencers as being like a real thing that we're actually talking about today. But honestly, in 2022, it's no different than the line item on your budget for radio and television advertising.
It's one of the top ways, the most successful return on investment as far as marketing goes. Like there's all kinds of stats with it, which is interesting to me. And then the last one are your mega or your celebrity influencers. So these are the people that have more than 1 million followers. You gotta have a really healthy marketing budget. Again, here locally, like their audience is gonna be so broad, it's not gonna be local. Tia Booth, she is from, she's on Bachelor. So she was a macro and has recently jumped into this like mega influencer status. So that's what a lot of times when people are on TV shows, they go to the macro, and then if they really do a good job of it, they kind of come to this.
See, and I think this is also a point where you have to talk about diminishing returns, because who listens to podcasts or looks at vlog or watches vlogs on YouTube or what have you, and sees, you know, the product du jour. You know, it's like, I don't know, Joe Rogan does not use this really cheap, inexpensive Bluetooth headset that he's telling you about right now, okay? And he might tell you that he uses it every day, and I buy them for everybody and my dog, and you're like, no, we all know as marketers, someone wrote that script, he's reading it, right? Now there are people that say, we do not sell anything that we don't believe in. And you know what, the funny thing is, like a year ago or 2 years ago, I actually believed that from some people, and now I don't. Because like they changed like sleep system mattress and then this other mattress, and it's like 4 different mattresses, and you're like, well, how many mattresses do you sleep on? So there is you know, sure, you're gonna get your product out there, right? I mean, people are going to hear about it, but are they gonna buy it? And that's the question.
And I think the interesting thing with like the macro into the mega, like she is a roommate influencer, and that girl sells roommate cups like nobody's business. She goes with a discount, and they always sell out when she posts them. But yeah, I did a funny post. I should have put it on here. For Naptime Kitchen, I did a story, and I was like, well, when Naptime Kitchen tells me to buy something, I always do. Like I have an air fryer she recommended, a back massager, my watch band. Like she recommends something, and I just go buy it every time. Like, well. She does her job, like she's good at it.
Of course, the more popular these people are, the more they have wild hair tendencies. So when you're buying an influencer that is in this category, you definitely want to make sure that you've got those guidelines and recommendations and rules. And this is probably where you're inking contracts, because obviously one slip up and now your brand looks like, well, whatever they just did. So.
Okay, so how do you partner with influencers? Obviously, you want to set partnership goals. So what is that? Do you want to attract a new audience, increase brand awareness, generate sales, increase your Instagram following, promote product launch, retain customers, generate engagement, extend reach? But they're all so good. And I actually really like this list because I was like, even not with influencers, I was like, that's a good list to like get started with, and like as you're setting goals. So thinking about what you want to do with your influencers, which goal do you want them to help you reach? It's super important.
Because there will be different influencers for different jobs, just like there's different platforms for different jobs.
And then measuring your progress. So, you know, you've set these goals, you've found these influencers, they're doing things, and then measuring it. So your engagement rates, your impressions, your brand awareness, all of those things to kind of determine, are you being successful? You know, some of it's easy, generating sales. A lot of times with an influencer, that's why they have a special code, because then the brain can determine if people are using your code, if it's worth the money that they're putting out there. Partnership structure, there's a lot of things that kind of go into that. So the time frame, how long is it gonna last? What are the deadlines with it? Is the influencer gonna write a review? Are they gonna share sponsored posts, giveaways, contents, take over your social media account? And remembering that whatever they do, it's sharing a post is a lot cheaper than creating a video. Like everyone in this room knows how much work goes into creating a video, that kind of thing.
I have to stand back here. I just realized if I stand up here, they just get like the worst part. You're short.
Yeah. Content quality, so again, what pictures, videos, brand mentions, Instagram story features, all of that with an influencer needs to be laid out to a contract. The usage rights afterwards, like obviously the influencer retains the ownership, but you need to request full content usage rights, because then you can repurpose it later. Guidelines, we already talked about that. And then payment. Because here's the thing that I think a lot of brands don't always understand. So you agree to enter into a contract with this influencer, and then you don't pay them for their work, which happens a lot of times. That influencer has a very engaged and active audience, and they're going to bash you to that audience.
And they probably have intimate details of your product service brand.
So just
don't host them.
Yeah.
And you know, this is we talked about this last month. We showed a bunch of social media gaffes, right? Which led to a few guffaws and chuckles. And for example, you know, the influencer that was paid to you know, tweet about how much they like BlackBerry, and they tweeted it from their iPhone.
Right.
So when you have these guidelines, be sure to put something in there that would be kind of a bulwark against that. So for example, if you're you know, if you're High Rise, and High Rise decides to reach out to Natalie and say, you know what, we're gonna pay you 1 campfire mocha latte a week to just only talk about us, only promote us, talk about how awesome we are, get us out there. And then Natalie posts a picture accidentally with Starbucks cup in her console of her vehicle. That's not nice, that's not great. You know, Natalie just breached the contract and the guidelines. So have an understanding of you know, what the ground rules are, and then also, by the way, monitor what's happening. Because when you purchase an influencer, you now own a stake in what they say and how they act.
Things to consider, there are agencies for influencers. There's a girl that went to my high school that's an influencer out in California, and she just got signed with an agency, and she posted about it. So if you are gonna go like big time, that it's just easier. It's gonna cost you more, but it's just easier. Have a budget in mind, but be open to what they charge. There's a lot of times where brands will approach an influencer and they're like, hey, like you might do this sweatshirt and I need you to do 3 TikToks, a post, a blog, and the influencer is like, that sweatshirt won't pay my bills. Like, so, and that's a lot of work. So just keeping in mind, like, again, and I feel like everyone in this room understands what goes into that, but just keeping in mind, like, how much work goes into creating a quality piece of content.
Well, and posts and pictures are gonna be much cheaper than videos. We all know that, I mean.
But videos are gonna get you better reach.
Videos get you better reach, so I mean, it could take sometimes 30 minutes to edit 1 minute of footage, so that's what you kind of bake into the cake, and when that person has an hourly rate, I mean, be prepared to pay for that video, that only 3-minute video.
We already talked about goals. Again, don't expect them to do it for free. Okay, so we talked about ambassadors, we talked about influencers, now what? A comparison between the two, and I feel like, again, like I kind of preface this, everyone in this room is gonna go with an ambassador over an influencer for the most part. Not always. So an ambassador is oftentimes more trustworthy for their audiences, they're more genuine. And that's just because this isn't their job, it's a hobby, they're just excited about it. You know, we didn't get anything for filming and creating that reel about the landing zone. We just, it was cool, it was fun. So I was like, hey, let's do this.
I mean, depending on who's managing the social media, they might not even know it exists.
I know, I tagged them and they haven't shared it, and I was like, I bet they didn't even see that.
And side note, when you got people making content for your business for free, the least you can do is like it.
Yeah.
No offense to ladies, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
That's just a
Well,
rule of thumb.
it's such good, I mean, toot my own horn, but like, it was a good reel. It showed the restaurant, it showed the cool atmosphere and the ambiance, and like, they should share it. It's free marketing.
Her husband had to watch that video, that reel 3 times.
That's right.
So just like that.
They're more likely to share with their friends and the local audience. It's more cost effective. And they kind of become known for your product. So again, like we joke about the campfire mocha, but I have a stinking shirt that talks about it. Like it is my favorite thing. And so it just kind of becomes what you're known for. Whereas with an influencer, obviously you have a contract, so you know they're gonna post when they say they're gonna post. It's their job, so they take that commitment very seriously. And they have an audience that's expecting recommendations. And so sometimes that can really tie into it in a great way.
And have regular meetings with them. I mean, this is their job, again, like be sure to keep on them like you would any contractor or any other employee, because at that point, that's kind of what they are.
So ways to partner or how to find them. So obviously searching your hashtags, your tags, your mentions, sharing your content. Be sure to follow best practices. So make sure if you're sharing content, you tag them. You don't just like if they put a photo, you don't just take it and repost it and not like have a conversation with them.
Which is just general rule of thumb for anything. It's not great to like screenshot and share that. You always want to share your
creating an affiliate plan. There's a lot of businesses that have gone to this, and I think it's a really great way to kind of dip your toe in the water with this. But where, you know, if somebody uses your code, they earn like a discount or they earn cash back or however you want to put it out there. Affiliate plans are a really great way to jump into that. Doing social media takeovers. Kenney and I did that for the CVB a few years ago. It was like 4 years ago. It was like pre-pandemic.
and tornado.
Oh, it was
Because we
before
toured
the
the
tornado too. Yep.
We're gonna have to do that again, because it's
Yeah.
changed since then.
But that was fun because we did the social takeover and like, I mean, because we ate at a bunch of places and showed the food and showed so they paid for all of our meals and that kind of stuff. That was like our compensation, and we got to do some fun tours and stuff. So you can get products or services. The guest bloggers or podcasting, I think, is a great way to get people to kind of tie into you.
No, you're the one that ran smack.
I did. I was like, oh, I'm done. Well, if there's a lot of empty white space, you can fill it in very well. Kenney makes the presentations pretty well. I just put that too.
Which is funny because I'm the utilitarian. Anyways, so yeah, you know, here's the thing, the too long didn't listen, is ambassadors are people that love your brand and you can convince them to continue to love your brand more openly. And influencers are people you pay to love your brand and then they will love your brand openly. That doesn't mean that it has to be millions of dollars into a budget. You know, I think that when, you know, Natalie talked about the CBD takeover that we did, you know, we went to 3-Story, we went to Central Dairy, we went to the prison, we went to Prison Brews for lunch. And so not only, by the way, was that an opportunity for CBD, but that was an opportunity for 3-Story and Central Dairy and Prison Brews. And so, but I would say that there was a bit of a crossover there, right? They contacted us because we've already posted about how much we love living in Jefferson City and love living in Central Missouri. Sure. But then they gave us some perks in order to go do these things, which then at that point kind of became, you know, we kind of transitioned into an influencer role. And there were absolutely some risks that they took with doing that. But there were guidelines that we followed as well. I mean, for example, if we do something wrong on their page, that reflects poorly on them. We joked about Natalie taking some videos of us driving to our next location. She's like, "Don't get pulled over." And I'm like, okay. You know, you never know what can happen whenever you've got an influencer doing something for you. But that's also part of the fun too. So do you have any questions or any questions? It looks like there might be one on here, but does anyone have anything in here before we read this one? All right. So Bryn, if anyone tags you in a post, does that explicitly give you permission to reshare their post?
Yes.
That's the short answer. I understand needing to have a conversation if you take their content and share it as your own post, but I wasn't sure on reshares. Great question.
So Bryn, I think like an example of that, like obviously we came to the backdrop and took a bunch of photos and you guys shared our posts about that. But then you also just messaged me and you're like, hey, can I use these photos for marketing? And I was like, absolutely. And so I think that's the difference, like whenever with the, and people who are like, when we tag a business, we make those posts public, that way you can just share them to your page. Not everybody does that or knows the difference, so that's the other time you might have to have like a conversation with them about it. But yeah, I think you have a solid handle on it for how to do that.
Absolutely. First of all, if somebody posts something and tags your business, that is, in my opinion, absolutely free reign for you to share it if you're utilizing the share function of that platform, right? That goes back to the whole, don't just right click, save picture, create new post, attach picture and go. That's where you want to reach out to the person and see if they have, if they've given you permission in order to share it. Even though it's already been posted, what you're doing is first of all, you're protecting yourself. And you're also asking permission to use it in a different way than it was originally intended. So that's always a good rule to make sure you're protecting yourself.
Janet asked if you have to sign anything to become an ambassador. I think that depends on regulations that you may have. A lot of times, for me, anytime I've been asked to be an ambassador or have asked others to be an ambassador, we've not had a formalized agreement. It's been more of an informal thing. But I think it just kind of depends on, like, if you're asking for like the hospital, there might be other regulations. Whereas if you're asking for like the podcast, I think it's more informal in that regard.
Yeah, and again, an ambassador is generally going to be someone you kind of know. So you're going to kind of already have an understanding of how they operate and their level of comfort. And your comfort with them. So it really is, it can be a case-by-case basis that you would make that determination. Anything else? That's all we want to know.
Brent just said thanks for confirming.
All right, guys. Well, hey, guess what? You have 6 more minutes of your lunch hour to go walk around or do something outside. Janet, I expect you to get up and walk out that door and just bask in the sunshine for just 5 minutes. But of course, you can also go back and take a look at this presentation and continue the conversation at the Chamber Social Media Forum Facebook group. And
it'll be on YouTube. Maybe not today. Ashley gets it up usually this week.
You know, it's funny. I saw Ken and Linda Funky like the post earlier, and I was like, Linda, I wish you knew that I bring you up every time because I never remember the name of the group. But y'all should be a part of it by now, so feel free to go there and continue the conversation. So thanks for sharing your day.
Thanks, guys. So Newville Consulting.